Welcome to Gracefully Greying. I am your host, attorney Henry Gornbein. We live in an aging community with more and more people ending up in assisted living facilities and senior residences, in nursing homes, and all kinds of healthcare facilities. Today on Gracefully Greying, I am very pleased to welcome as our guest attorney Randall Blau as he leads us in a discussion regarding nursing home negligence. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's our pleasure. We look forward to hearing your words of wisdom. First of all, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and your background?
Sure. I'm currently an attorney at Buckfire Law in Southfield, Michigan. I've been here for almost 15 years, but I've been practicing law almost 29. I grew up in the Bloomfield Hills area, went to Lasser High School, and there was a Lasser, and then went to Kalamazoo College, and then U of D Law School. And since that time, I've been practicing mostly in the medical malpractice, adult foster care, and nursing home negligence area. And the majority of my cases involved, unfortunately, elder abuse and what can happen if there's not good care.
Randy, why don't you tell us about some of the issues that you deal with in nursing home cases?
There are a variety of issues that kind of come up in my practice of law regarding people that are in nursing homes or assisted living facilities. We tend to see a lot of cases where people develop bed sores. And those are like pressure sores that you can develop when people are not turning you or properly caring for you. And ultimately, they can require surgeries or sometimes they get infected. And unfortunately, we have a lot of wrongful death cases where people, because of neglect, end up passing away from these bed sores. The other big area, for whatever reason, probably not that uncommon for your audience, is that falls. There tend to be a ton of people that are not being assisted to and from, whether it be the bathroom or meals or things like that, that sustain a fall, and in doing so, either fracture a hip or a leg, or even unfortunately, there are times when they hit their head and have brain bleeds, and again, pass away from their injuries. Those are probably the two main areas where we see a lot of cases. There are obviously cases involving medication errors, whether people are not receiving medications they should have, or even over medication results in some type of either injury or death to them.
I've got a question. And are a lot of these facilities, frankly, understaffed or not properly staffed? Because falls are a critical issue, and also bed sores. Uh, I know of situations with bed sores, and as you said, they can be lethal.
Absolutely. For whatever reason, I think there's a lot of reasons behind it, but there is a staffing shortage in the either whether it be adult foster care, nursing homes, or adult assisted living places. I do think that there is actually an influx in this area of the population. So there are more and more people that do need care, whether it be assisted living or in a nursing home. And it's tough to get staff. For one, they don't pay real well. And it takes a special person that wants to work with people that are aging, that have more and more medical conditions. Sometimes they say things they don't mean. There's a lot of care and providing dignity and changing diapers and doing hygiene care and things like that. Not a lot of people want to do that. And there is a big staffing shortage, not just in Michigan, but nationally, for people that want to take on that responsibility. But once someone does agree to be a staff member, whether it be an aide or a nurse, the hope is that they want to be there. They're there to help take care of people when other people can't take care of their loved ones. And that's what you really hope for when you're putting someone in a place like that.
Do you find that there are any trends in this area, Randy?
Yeah, there's a lot of different trends that have been going on recently. One of the things you just mentioned, there definitely is a shortage of staff, and when that happens, patients don't get the care that they need, and there's more and more mistakes that are made. I think one of the big reasons behind that is we're finding that more and more facilities are being either bought out or run by national organizations for profit. So their goal is to try to maximize their profits, and at the cost of having less and less people there to care for them. They're cutting staff, they're cutting corners, and we're seeing an influx in those kind of claims about that. The other thing that we're seeing in terms of trends is that we've had a lot of cases recently where either the facility or the insurance company have filed bankruptcy. I think they had a lot of hard times during COVID, and because of that, they've not been able to dig out. So we've had a lot of claims recently where either the facility itself is in bankruptcy or even the insurance company that insures the facility are having financial difficulties, which makes it more difficult to help when someone is injured or unfortunately passes away.
Sounds like a vicious circle, for lack of a better word. Let's go. Why are there more and more senior residents in assisted living facilities? I mean, you mentioned, Randy, that more and more national chains are doing this, and I know a lot of local companies that have them are multi-state now. So why are there more and more?
Well, I do think that if it's run properly, there are a lot of businesses think it's a good business model. There's an aging population, so there's no shortage of people that do need to have more assistance in healthcare. So I think a lot of the national corporations are seeing this as an area that should increase over time. I also think that as our population gets older, they're living longer. I think a lot of medical advances have been going on where I think people are living 80s, 90s, even we've got some clients that were in their hundreds, which I think kind of manifests itself into what's been going on here. I also think that we as a population are realizing that there are times as we get older that it's really difficult to care for our loved ones. We used to keep them in our home and try to take care of them as best we could. But with all these new facilities that are being opened, putting someone, whether it be an assisted living or a nursing home, can relieve a lot of stress, financially, anxiety, and trying to care for someone in your family when you can't help them up and down stairs or bathe them every single day or answer the same question multiple times when they have dementia. So I think there's a need for it more than ever. And I think with all the facilities out there, maybe we're sooner to pull the trigger and place someone in one of these homes than we used to be in the past.
I've got a question for you, Randy, and that is there a difference between an assisted living facility and a nursing home?
Absolutely, it's a very, very good question. There are different levels, and there's independent living facilities, which typically are more of like an apartment setting where they may have community meals. There may be resources there for concierge services. They may have a pharmacy built in, where the residents there mostly live fully independently. They just have resources if they need them. Assisted living is kind of a step up from there, where the staff in the support group there, they may remind people to go to meals. They may remind them to take their medications. They may actually administer medications, but they're not fully needing nursing care or around the clock care like you might in a nursing home. The highest level of care is actually what they call a skilled nursing home. And that's typically where the resident no longer can do much for themselves, meaning they will need assistance with either dressing, changing, bathing, feeding, what we call activities of daily living. They may need medications administered to them, several times a day, and the medications to being tracked. And they also need people that are there to remind them to do things that they typically would not do. So the lowest level is independent living, then assisted living, and then the highest level of care is skilled nursing care.
And then above that, would that be memory care, where someone really can no longer function at all and has to be really monitored 24/7, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, in a lot of the facilities, even in some of the assisted living places, even below skilled nursing homes, they do have what they call a dementia unit, where people that obviously have issues with all different varying degrees of dementia may need more care, more of reminders. They may not, need a lot more nursing care, but they need reminders that need to be watched so that they don't wander either out of the unit or into other people's rooms. You will find in a lot of these facilities, they have a specific section for only people with dementia or memory issues. Absolutely.
Let's talk about cases. And let's say someone comes to you saying that perhaps it's a parent or another relative uh, has either fallen and broken something, or perhaps there's a lack of care. What happens with the initial consultation? Why don't you give our viewers a little peek at what happens in your office?
Sure. So, normally what we get calls all the time about, unfortunately, too many calls, which is a good problem to have about people being injured or passing away as a result of, negligence in a nursing home. The first thing we end up doing is making sure that we've got a good point of contact, a family member that has a lot of information about what happened and what's been going on. And that'll require getting the medical records, signing authorizations that allow us to obtain the records either from the nursing home, assisted living place, or if they went to the hospital, to kind of get the medical records in it and take a look and see, exactly what happened. Internally here, besides myself being an attorney, we have nurses on staff that will look through the medical records. And based upon what's in the records and what the family is saying, we make a determination. Do we think that there was what we call a breach in the standard of care? Was there substandard care that was provided? And did that care result in some type of injury to the resident? If those two things are met, that means that there very likely could be a claim against whether it's the staffing, the nursing staffing organization or the facility itself. If indeed there's a claim, there's a lot of steps we have to go through as attorneys before we can bring the claim. If it's a malpractice case against a nurse or a physician, there are things called notices of intent that basically tell the facility or staff that, hey, we're going to bring a claim against you. And then there's a mandatory waiting period in which we get experts that review the records and sign off on an affidavit that says, yep, I've looked at the records. I do think there was substandard care. And as a result of that care, this person was either injured or passed away. That's typically the process that we go through before we actually can bring a lawsuit or fully investigate a claim for a patient.
Now, how long does a typical lawsuit take? Let's use the Tri-County, for example, since this is where we are.
So there's different phases in the beginning, obtaining all the information we need in terms of the medical records. Obviously, if there's a death, the death certificate, if there's an autopsy done, the autopsy report, those things in and of themselves can take, 3 or 4 months or so. Then once all that's in, we take a look at the case. If we think there's something here, usually that's another 60 or 90 days, something like that. The majority of these cases do settle or resolve prior to what we call litigation, where you have to file the case in the circuit court. If indeed you have to file it in the circuit court, the normal length of the case, once it's in court, somewhere between a year or 2, if you're going to be going to trial. But again, the vast majority of these cases, because they have bad optics. Nursing homes and assisted living places know that we've got, a specific part of society that are loved by their family, and they don't like trying these cases a lot. But even when they do, a lot of sympathy is garnered for families who've lost a loved one. So if they do need to go to trial, sometimes it's a year or 2, but a lot of these do resolve short of that.
Randy, tell us about some of the cases you have dealt with in this area with regard to assisted living and senior residences.
Oh, sure. So I can tell you, for whatever reason, we've seen most recently a lot of choking cases. These are cases where someone that either may have had a stroke, or they have dysphagia, where they have difficulty swallowing, or they need a special diet because they have a problem with either aspirating fluid or food, or choke on larger types of food. We've had a lot of cases in the last 5 years or so where people have either been given food that was not cut into small pieces, or given things that are not on their diet, or even left alone. There are a lot of residents or patients that need to have assistance in eating because they're impulsive and they don't know any better, and they shove food in their mouth very rapidly or eat things that they shouldn't be eating. And unfortunately, a lot of the times these residents or patients choke, and by the time someone can come and help them, it's too late. So we've had a lot of those cases recently, and we've also seen a big upswing in either over medicating with things like morphine, or medications that help to sedate patients when they give too much and over sedate them. And we just recently had a case where a gentleman had been on blood thinners for many, many years for what's called AFib, a heart condition where you need to have a blood thinner. And when he was transferred from the hospital to a nursing home, they did not continue the blood thinner. And as a result, a few weeks later, he had a stroke, and a very significant stroke, and passed away. So those are kind of the typical cases that we've seen most recently, in addition to the bed sore and the fall cases we spoke about earlier.
How common are bed sores?
Well, they call them a never event. In Medicare, typically will not pay physicians or hospitals if a bed sore developed under their care, because they should not happen. with proper care and monitoring patients, turning them, preventing them from progressing to what's called stage 4. They go from 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stage 4 being the most significant, meaning in size and depth of a bed sore. Um, those things should be prevented. Now, people's nutrition and their underlying health can obviously affect that. But we see, I would probably say, 20% of our cases in nursing home cases are for bed sores. And it's a common theme where the family keeps telling us they weren't being turned, and the staff doesn't document that they were being turned. And unfortunately, the bed sore goes on to become infected. And by the time that the staff does something about it, it's too late. They've developed sepsis. This is where an infection actually gets in your bloodstream and can affect other parts of your body and cause your passing. So it's more frequent than it should be. Um, we rarely find bed sores in patients that are being cared for at home by loved ones, because they're pretty rigorous and regimented in making sure their loved one gets out of bed, moves to a wheelchair if they're going to be a wheelchair, gets them up, make sure that they're turning. So we find a lot more in nursing homes than we do people that are being taken care of at home.
How hard are they to treat once they become infected or once they're there?
So the goal obviously is to prevent them completely.
Right.
But once they do start with proper treatment, whether it be there are certain creams that can be put on, there are certain bandages that can be used, what they call offloading, not just turning side to side. There are wedges that they can put to assist people that stay on one side versus the other. Once they start, there are times when they progress pretty quickly. It's one of those things where once they start, if you're not giving proper treatment, you're not getting patients off of a lot of times these are the sacral, the buttocks area. If you're not getting them off that area, it makes it more difficult to treat. But there are wound care specialists at all these facilities, whether they come in from outside or there's likely a wound care nurse in the facility. And their whole responsibility is to check on the residents that have known bed sores and treat them so that they don't progress to getting onto stage 4 or what they call unstaged bed sores.
What about falls? Are they fairly common as well?
Yeah, people come in with different histories of dizziness. There are a lot of patients that have neuropathy, meaning numbness in their lower extremities, that make it difficult for them to feel it when they're walking. And there's different levels of care that people need. There may be what's called standby assist, where the aide is supposed to just literally be next to the resident and make sure that they're either holding on to a handrail or if they start to get wobbly, correcting them. There are also people, though, that should not be walking at all, and they need to make sure that they're not using their walker and that they're using only a wheelchair. So it is a very common case that we have where someone is left in the bathroom, for instance, who's not supposed to be walking, and the aide either leaves the room or is not right there. The resident calls for help. It takes an extended period of time and no one responds. So that then they stand up and try to help themselves and fall. We see a lot of that, unfortunately, where people that don't know better than not to walk do attempt to walk because there's nobody around them.
Let's go to the reverse side of the coin, and that is we've heard about the things that go wrong. What should someone look for if they're contemplating placing a loved one either in a senior residence, an assisted living facility, etc.?
I think one of the most important things to look for is, how the staff is treating the residents. Um, every place when you come in, they show you around, they show you what they can do, they show you all the beautiful things and what kind of services they provide. But I think it's really important to either talk to the other residents or even family members to find out how satisfied they are with the placement of their loved one there. You will find out a lot of things by talking to the residents themselves or at least family members. How often they're ignored if they use their call late, what type of activities they actually participate in. Have they, had any issues with whether there be not enough staff to get their loved one up and take them to the restroom, or simple things like the meals. Nutrition is very important. People that are getting older for a lot of different reasons, including bed sores, like we talked about. So finding out about what the meals are like, when they're offered, how they're offered, Those are things that to me are pretty important when you're looking at a facility because, one size doesn't fit all. Every person that comes in may have different kinds of needs, different personalities, and finding a good fit's really important before you actually put them in there.
Well, that would be another question. Don't a lot of facilities really try and maybe minimize the needs of individuals because they're trying to do cater to the majority? I don't know if that's a correct statement, but that's just a thought that crossed my mind, Randy.
Oh no, absolutely, you're correct. There are, as we said, difficult situations because a lot of the people there may need minimal assistance. They may just need a reminder once in a while to take their medication, or hey, you weren't at lunch today. What's going on? Can I bring it to you? But there are other people that are in the same facility that need a lot more care. That they will lay in bed all day. They won't, bathe or take a shower unless someone helps them do that. They won't eat unless you bring them food. So, although the facilities really do like to cater to the masses, their ability to actually give more one-to-one care or higher care to specific residents is something important to find out before you place someone there.
Randy, what are some positives for families needing an assisted living facility?
So one, it's a great place for the people that are great candidates. I think an assisted living facility allows a lot of socialization of people that as they're getting older, and that's really important. If they've been living at home with you and you've been trying to provide care for them, they're not around peers. They're not around people that they have a built-in ability to play cards with, talk with, whether do puzzles, whatever it may be. I think the socialization is something really important to people as they get older that you can't provide in your own home. I also think we have found from a lot of our clients that the reason they placed their loved one in a home was that it was becoming overwhelming at home. They felt like they were, having to watch a kid at times, making sure that they didn't get up out of bed without assistance, making sure that they were bathing, making sure they were eating. And having that level of responsibility causes stress on the entire family unit. It causes stress within the children and the grandchildren. It causes stress with the loved one that's getting older. So being able to place someone in an assisted living or even nursing home can relieve that anxiety, that stress. And the main goal is to make sure that they're being safe. And the hope is that if you're at the right facility, you can put your mind at ease a little bit that somebody is there to watch them and help them so that you don't have to be on call 24 hours a day.
What are the costs involved, if you know?
So there, obviously they vary depending on, there are a lot of facilities that are either Medicaid or Medicare that require that the people have lower assets in order to qualify for that. A lot of times the higher facilities, they can cost eight, nine, $10,000 a month, depending on the level of care, depending on how new the facility is. So there is a lot of places that are cost prohibitive to a lot of families that can't afford even five or $6,000 a month to place a loved one there. Um, Assisted living has a little bit of a different scale because a lot of it has less care, and you'll find that the more care someone needs, the more money it costs. Even within assisted living or nursing homes, different levels of care require more services, and with each service, it's kind of like an add-on. With each service, you get charged more.
How can families look up information as far as, inquiring about facilities, maybe ratings, maybe, I don't know, internet sites, reviews?
So, there are, as simple as Googling the facility will allow you to, typically you'll see people that have posted reviews. Now, the reviews tend to skew either very, very low because someone's very unhappy, or very, very high because people are very happy. So that doesn't give you a real great analysis of the facility itself, but it gives you an idea of what certain people do or don't like about the facility. If you want to do a deeper dive and you are somewhat literate on the computer, at michigan.gov, it's a website, and there is a department that is licensing and regulation. LARA is licensing and regulatory affairs, excuse me. And they have the task of investigating nursing homes or assisted living places when people make complaints. So one of the things that you can do is you can look on the website for the facility where your loved one is going to be placed or is placed, and see how many investigations have gone on at that facility over the last 5 to 10 years, and even see what the facilities were investigated for. If someone is, injured at a facility or there's negligence there, we often recommend our clients contact Lara at michigan.gov, because an investigation is done is by the Attorney General's office, and they investigate what happened. And if they think that there was negligent care, the facility can be reprimanded, they can be fined, they can even have their license revoked under really unfortunate circumstances that has happened. So one of the things I would recommend is looking at the website where Lara does their investigations to try to determine if this facility is a repeat offender or it's only happened once in a while.
Randy, tell us about some of the areas that your law firm deals with that impact upon those of us who are gracefully graying.
So in addition to what I specifically do, which is the elder abuse and nursing home negligence type of cases, we have a lot of cases involving people that are graying gracefully, that are, crossing a crosswalk and getting hit by motor vehicles, unfortunately. We've had several of those in the most recent years. We've also, as would be expected, people that fall in nursing homes or assisted living also fall on uneven sidewalks, whether it be, walking down the street, whether it be in apartment buildings, wherever it may be. We tend to have a lot of falls. Our firm does the majority of like personal injury type cases, but we do see a lot of cases involving people as they get older for a variety of different reasons.
How can someone reach your firm?
So we have our website, which is, buckfirelaw.com. If you Google us, we're in Southfield. We have an office in Ann Arbor, one in Shelby Township. We don't do any direct TV marketing. We kind of get a lot of our cases through word of mouth. And fortunately, we've had a lot of great reviews over the years. We've been doing it a very long time. The firm has been here for 50 years. It was started by the Vicky and David Buckfire, who had passed away more recently. But their sons have taken it over, and we've been doing this for a long time now.
Randy, what are some final thoughts that you can share with us in the final moments before we sign off?
Most importantly to me is to make sure that, when it is a big decision to have your loved one either in an assisted living or a nursing home, that you understand the gravity of the decision, which most people do, that you do your homework, and that once you make the decision that you continue to go and visit them. It's easy to have conversations with someone when they're in your home. It takes a lot more effort to go see them when they've been placed somewhere, but it's really important. One, because you want to make sure the staff there knows that you're there and you're involved in their care and want to know what's going on. And two, as a grandson and a son of people that have been in nursing homes and assisted living, I think it's important to continue the conversations with the children and grandchildren, to pass on the memories, to pass on the family history, to make sure that even though they're not in your home anymore, that they're still loved, they're still valued, and still wanted.
Great words of wisdom. Randall Blau, I want to thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Graying. I want to thank our viewers as well as our sponsors and, of course, Bloomfield Cablevision. Thank you so much.